And I guess just keeping on this topic. So you had a personal encounter that I believe we can dig into like the details of it later on, but that part of your story is that you had some personal encounter with something related to UAP, and that you mentioned it to your colleagues at the CIA, and that they were like able to provide you very specific information regarding like, did this thing happen? Did you check for this and that? Um, so it seemed like your colleagues were like somewhat knowledgeable about this phenomenon. You want to
Yeah,
talk?
the people, the encounter, I prefer to call it an incident or maybe an encounter, I guess. I have no idea what it is. I mean, I don't refer to it as, and people have referred to it as my abduction experience. I don't know. I think it's really dangerous to assign a label to these things because we don't know what that actually is. All I know, it was extraordinarily real experience to me, with physical ramifications for both myself and my wife, when we quote unquote woke up. But if you ask me, I mean, I can't explain it. I have no clue. It resembles other experiences contactees have had, but it is also what UFO researchers have called high strangeness. The complexity of it, the absurdity of it, is is almost beyond the pale. There's no place to put it. I mean, where do you go with it? People that have these experiences, they can't go like, to the FBI or the local law enforcement and say, I had this incredible experience. I don't know what do I do? I mean, who do I talk to? They have no idea. We don't have a department of ufology that exists in any place in the government. Now we have classified programs that deal with this, but for most people, that's not, you're not, it's not accessible. And even when this happened to me, I mean, I had no idea, where to go. I mean, CIA, as far as I knew, didn't have anything to do with this at all, and I didn't know about it because in any intelligence organization, any good intelligence organization you would work in, has something called need to know. So if you work for CIA and your job is, say, Russian military, looking at the Russian military, you're not going to get access to Chinese submarine developments. I mean, that data, you're just not. And if you try to get access to that, you're going to have security knocking on your door and counterintelligence saying, why you have an interest in that? So if you walked into the halls of the agency, occasionally you might see a little name tag that says, "Oh, this is the European division or the Russia division," but you don't walk in. I mean, to the doors all the time. Sometimes the doors are closed, and if you do go in, you meet usually with a front office executive assistant who said, "What's your business? What do you want to know? Who do you want to meet?" And if you don't have a good reason to be there, they escort you out. So it's all need to know, and it should be that way too. I mean, it's you're there to protect secrets. So the system you work on, the computer system you work on too, I mean, it's highly monitored. So I mean, if you try to do things there, they're gonna get you. They're gonna catch you, and they're gonna interview you, and want to know why, why you're interested. And you may have a legitimate reason too. But if you do, you go to your superior and say, I really will not get information on that because it's going to affect the work I'm doing. And they have no problem granting that once they hear what you need. So
So I guess when you were like talking to your colleagues about this, it wasn't in like a formal capacity. It was more like you were telling a buddy something happened to you, and then they just happened to know a lot about the phenomenon.
yeah, this happened up 20 some years after the incident itself. And they weren't, neither of them were CIA. I was working by that time as a consultant, an independent consultant to the agency on a completely different subject area, and when they found out in 2014, the person who found out about it was John Alexander. I don't know if you're familiar with John, but I had run into him at an energy conference up in New York, and we got to talk. And I noticed who he was because I have his book. And so we chatted and I told him about our experience and he put me in touch with some people. And then that that changed everything because then I started getting people coming to my house and calling me up and giving me classified briefings on not so much on UAP, but on the topic of the phenomenon itself, where it exists, how it manifests itself, and believe me, they don't know much. But what they do know is it was startling to me because I had been studying this for 40 plus years, and as I explained to somebody recently, it's one thing to read a book about it, maybe talk to somebody about it. But when somebody sits you down and said, well, I just conducted, X amount of years at a national lab on this particular issue, and here's what we found, and you realize that the information, the data is true, it's real. The veil just sort of falls off, and they go, uh-oh, I'm looking at another interpretation of reality here that I never really considered before. That's the startling piece. Not so much knowing that, an element of psi or the phenomenon is real. It's exposing it that, yeah, I mean, serious people, scientists, and these people were both scientists, actually three of them, they were all scientists, very well-known scientists. And they said, yeah, it's all real. I was I was actually stunned. I mean, it took me a while, to sort of come to terms with it. Look, I'm from Ohio, right? Northeastern Ohio. I was a paper boy, a good Catholic boy growing up. I had a normal middle class, lower middle class existence. I went to, public schools. I wasn't attuned to any of this stuff. And until I got into college, and then I majored in English lit with a concentration on romanticism. And romanticism sort of puts you, if you get into it more deeper, you get into mysticism and you get into some other elements. And that gives you a flavor of it. That's when I became very interested, but in all of this. And so when I pursued it, I also had an older brother that was interested in uh, Western mysticism and particularly as it applied to religion and, the lives of the saints, things along those lines. I'm sorry. I get very discursive as I talk about this, and I apologize for that. But
Great. But,
rein me back in, Suri, if you have to. So
no, I mean it's a topic kind of goes all over the place.
it does, yeah.
Also, everyone in the chat, in case you came later, feel free to like post some questions in the chat or raise your hand, and we can. I have a bunch of questions to get to, but it's also feel free to like ask questions. So I guess going back to 2014 was when you met these scientists that were like pretty informed that I guess were working with national labs
Yeah.
around the time when To the Stars was formed. So maybe for
Yeah.
the audience, and To the Stars is like a kind of an entertainment and also UAP research organization that was kind of one of the pioneers that before the whole New York Times article and before it became like a national news story. Um, and it was started by Tom DeLonge, who was the Blink 182's guitarist, just a punk band. But yeah, he was doing like a lot of really good work talking with John Podesta, who was Bill Clinton's chief of staff and who was also Hillary Clinton's campaign manager at the time. So yeah, that's a whole rabbit hole. But I guess how did you get started with To the Stars, and how did you meet Tom DeLonge? How did that whole saga start? Was it kind of prompted by this meeting with the scientists?
Yeah. Well, afterwards, after I had spoken to these people, I uh, they wanted they started they had a study going on, and the study was dealing with at the time about 100 current and former senior level government officials who had run-ins with UAP or the phenomenon and that were damaged and or physically and or psychologically injured, let's say, by the phenomenon. And the scientists that I met were working on this. They were interested in getting samples, data samples, blood, uh, DNA, you name it, whatever they did. And I took all my medical files, and they're still conducting the research. The amount of people involved in this has gone up. And they're still doing that, but it's not classified per se, but it's sensitive. So, and it's HIPAA restricted. So, I don't talk about it too much, but suffice it to say that they're very concerned. I mean, we had lost 16 people through suicide based on the encounters they had. And I did see a HIPAA restricted. My wife's a clinical psychologist, so they felt it was okay to show my wife and I the HIPAA restricted presentation that they had done for the government on what had happened to some of these people who ran into UAP, and it's not pleasant. And most of the times, situations resolve themselves. Sometimes they do not. And sometimes the psychic damage or the psychological damage, it can be very intense, which is why I sort of warn people, and particularly people. I mean, actually, one of the reasons why I agreed to speak with you is over this particular topic. I feel very strongly about it that, at your age, and I don't mean to be ageist here, but trying to concentrate on this and getting involved in it where it becomes, an inordinate, taking us maybe an inordinate amount of your time. I don't recommend that. And particularly if you're not grounded, it can get real funny and real quickly. And when you associate with this topic, there's something called the hitchhiker effect. And it doesn't happen all the time, but maybe 10 to 20% of the cases where you open yourself up to this, and whatever the hell this phenomenon is, will will introduce itself in some form or fashion to you. And these are what, I don't know whether Freud called them synchronicities or is it Jung? I can't remember which one, but maybe Jung. And where you start noticing things you never noticed before, and things start happening in a way that you think is pretty strange. So, I mean, if you want to do that, fine, but I don't recommend that at all. I think, get your education, get out. You want to make this as a hobby, fine, but don't follow this necessarily full time. So I just lost my train of thought. Where the hell was I?
Yeah, so I guess like how did you meet? Yeah, good. Thanks for the advice. It helps that there's like not many jobs in this area, so that
No, no, there are no jobs in this area, and I can vouch for that. But no, but when I met Tom,